Okay, here we go. Here's number one. The management decision is wayward and misguided and comes as a complete hammer blow to me. It amounts to an elaborate collection of far-fetched ideas that are subjective and built upon nothing more than innuendo, guilt by implication, and a number of falsehoods that are readily disproven. Number two. The decision is self-serving and is an undignified rearguard action designed to give as little as possible. It's nothing more than a diversionary tactic intended to shift the spotlight away from the guilty parties and onto me, but with little or no justification. Nothing within the wording bears scrutiny, and much of it appears to have been plucked from thin air. Number three. Your statement regarding Mr. X employs classic smear tactics by trumping up charges to create the illusion of wrongdoing, before appearing to provide a so-called solution by threatening disciplinary action. It's very quick to condemn, however, there is a telling absence of hard evidence to support the employer's position, and nothing save strings of empty words to indicate any wrongdoing or poor performance on my part. Number four. My mental health has been adversely impacted, but there has been a noticeable reluctance to accept and acknowledge this within the decision, one which has been found completely wanting. The conclusions reached are largely built upon imaginary events and make many glaring errors or wrong assumptions. The decision you have arrived at is deliberately selective, manipulative, omits several important areas, and offends by threatening performance management or apportioning responsibility to me where there is no call for such redress. Number five. The weak basis for these findings is at odds with the facts, is self-destructive, and is clearly seen to undermine the employer's authority and standing. The conclusions reached serve only to mask the genuine problems. This only succeeds in underlining a coarse attempt to distance management from personal and collective culpability for their own deep-seated failings. Number six. The management position is a world away from the commendable values set out within the employee handbook. As a result, the decision represents an extraordinary failure, which cannot be condoned in any respect. It lapses into near silence on the proven management failings established by the investigation. These failings are granted an extremely low profile, as is the lack of redress for those whose conduct was found to be wanting. By contrast, management have rounded on me, making inappropriate and misguided calls for punitive action. Number seven. The management approach deliberately bypasses the substance of the complaint and is clearly aimed at sidestepping accountability, crushing me, and deterring others from following prescribed and approved processes in the future. Despite my best efforts to achieve fairness, this has been ignored, and the whole thrust of the decision paints a disturbing and negative picture. Number 8. I hope this appeal provides an opportunity for the presiding director to examine the reasoning behind such wayward findings and to call them into question. The central focus is flawed and is dominated throughout by a large number of shallow and irrelevant accusations. These are weak and unsavoury, have little merit or substance, and have no grounding or justification in the organisation's policies and procedures. Number 9. Having had little else to build a case on, management seem to have opted for a cynical and calculated tactic of diversion. Their clear inability to admit responsibility whilst being found in possession of a weak case has forced them onto the defensive. For these reasons, they have sought refuge in deflecting attention away from the chance of resolution and have become engaged in personalising the issues. Number 10. To achieve his ends, the director has chosen to attack the messenger by heaping trivial and unfair criticism upon me. This characterization of me as obsessive is factually inaccurate and completely uncalled for. My purpose in following the internal procedures and sending detailed information was done in good faith and not to hinder. A reactionary response like this was not unexpected, but as it peppers the director's statement from start to finish, and is clearly the main thrust, it is self-defeating and damaging to all concerned. Number 11. The decision to target me in this manner erodes respect, undermines the integrity of the formal disciplinary process, and trivialises the Council's internal policies and procedures. These measures are of serious purpose and were drawn up in order to safeguard all persons involved, not to enable the personalising of issues or to permit attacks upon the individual, but to counter genuine misconduct where it occurs. Number 12. I have complied with the Council's policies and procedures from day one. However, my attempts to have the issues addressed in line with internal guidance have been repeatedly thwarted. I now appear to have been branded a troublemaker. At the same time, managers have shown a clear reluctance to adhere to their own guidelines, which call for balance and the utmost integrity and professionalism. Instead, they have mishandled my complaint, have been far too eager to rebut my concerns, and have attempted to stifle me at every turn. Number 13. Managers appear to have gone to great lengths to avoid accountability for themselves and their colleagues. They have seized upon every opportunity to pass the blame onto me, which has had the effect of protecting the individuals now proven to be at fault. When the opportunity arrived, I looked to Mr. X to acknowledge in detail and use his influence to put things right, but he looked the other way. Instead of receiving a level-headed response, my complaint was greeted by a complete overreaction, built upon falsehoods and ugly threats. I have now become the innocent target of a blame culture, which has resulted in my hopes being dashed and my worst anxieties confirmed. Number 14. I have always made clear my trust and belief in the disciplinary process, whilst indicating to management my increasing concern that something very wrong was happening as the situation unfolded. The toxic management behaviour was eventually raised to a level which had negative repercussions on my health, consequences which were foreseeable, avoidable, and clearly spelled out beforehand to the directors concerned by our occupational health unit in written correspondence. Number 15. Although I have repeatedly drawn the director's attention to my family doctor's sick notes, my worsening levels of stress, The Occupational Health Unit's official warnings and other relevant correspondence, Mr. X's decision fails to acknowledge their existence. In fact, wider management have chosen not to heed these alarm calls or to take any action, which has made further potential damage to my health and well-being both foreseeable and avoidable.